Come on in, welcome to my home. Today we are actually going to talk about what it costs to be a caregiver. Not those normal things like, the extra expense of having somebody in your house, the extra expense of heat and utilities. We're going to talk about those things which you probably haven't thought of, and things which are going to affect you in ways that you probably aren't even concentrating on. This will pertain to if you're having children or if you have somebody who you're giving care for. There are lots of things which factor into how much this is really going to cost you. And the cost can be big. Now, the information that I'm using to back up these arguments is going to be linked down below in the description, so you can check all of that out. Also, I think I'm going to link some resources. We'll see what we do in this video. But one of the things that I found out that on average, a person spends about $6,000 of their own money when they're taking care of somebody. And it can be for little things that you don't even think of. That time that somebody wanted a pack of gum and you just went ahead and bought it, to that time where you bought something bigger and it's just something that you really don't think about until it's added up. And that $6,000 is for about a year. And that's a lot of money. That is a lot of money over a year, especially with the way your life might have changed. On average, a person gives 21 hours per week for an individual that they are caring for. Well, that's really good and everything, but if you've got a 40-hour a week or more job, things might have to change, which means that you might actually quit your job or reduce your hours. And that reduction of hours, that loss of income, well, that's going to have some major changes in your entire family life and your entire life period, because it's a reduction of income. No two ways about it. Your income has then been reduced, and that will change a lot of things which you have going forward. Also, which is even kind of stranger, is the fact that there will be new things that you're having to do that you never thought that you would be doing, or things like a family get-together. Family get-together can be expensive for the person who's actually the one who's hosting it, because most people who are caregivers, they need to have the family come to them versus the person go to the family. Now, with the reduction of work hours, that also could possibly mean a reduction of the ability to advance during that time that you're working. You might have gone from full-time to part-time and see a lot of things pass you by, because while you're taking care of that person, you are not really available for those positions. Or if you have absolutely quit your job, you're going to be, when you go back into the workforce, you might be starting over from scratch, starting over from the absolute beginning, which then means a lot of things have changed. A lot of things have changed. You need to be keeping up with what it was that you did while you were working, so that way when you want to return, you can return. Or you might even make a whole major change in your life once you get back into the working. But it will be a huge change. And one of the other changes is going to be insurance. A little case of the sniffles can really change things. And a major injury can really, really change things. Because if you have a major injury or even a little case of the sniffles, you might need to hire somebody to come in and cover for you while you are recuperating. And what you do is going to cost way more money than what you think it's going to cost. So even to have somebody come in for a day or two or a week or two might cost you a lot of money. And a lot of people, especially with families, are like, well, it happened to you, you should be the one paying for this. So yeah, that can become super expensive, and an expense that you were not prepared for because you've already reduced your hours or quit your job so that you could take care of that person. And now that you're the one who needs to be taken care of, where does that expense fall on? That's an interesting question. But let's get back to that family get-together. So no matter what the family does or how they do it, things are still going to have to get done. If the family stays over, you're still going to have the extra laundry to do. Even if they bring in paper plates and paper napkins and all that sort of stuff, You still have that to cart away, and for some places I'm finding out, it costs extra to have garbage taken away. Maybe you're running the dishwasher. Maybe you're washing dishes. Maybe you're keeping the house cooler or warmer. All of these things add up, and it's something that nobody ever thinks about until it actually happens, and suddenly you get hit with an extra bill that's way above what you had planned on because you had a family get-together because the person who you're taking care of is in your home. Now, is this a bad thing? No, not really. No, it's not really a bad thing at all. But it is something to plan for, something to think about. It's also something for the other family members to think about also as they plan these things. And let's talk about that family get-together that they have decided they will make it much easier upon you, and they will have it at their house because of the person not feeling well. Well, how are you getting there? Wait a minute, that means for a family get-together, which you normally wouldn't have planned for, it's not a holiday, it's just a family get-together for that person that you didn't plan on or anything, you have to get them there. And this is already cutting into an already cut into account. So that is a big, big issue. A lot of people don't think about the amount of stress that this puts on the provider's budget in ways that the provider doesn't even think of. But let's do it the opposite way. Let's talk about if the caregiver can afford all of these things. So is it fair that the person who can afford it has to pay for it all? Well, let's think about this. In a case scenario where the person who can afford it is actually the only one who can afford it, you're sort of in a bind. You guys have to decide on that. I can't tell you that one because it really comes down to if you can afford it, I would think that most likely, and nobody else can afford it, I would think that most likely you would. But what happens if you're all on financial equal footing? You're all doing financially fine, you all have exactly the same thing, and you all can afford it, and one takes it on either through volunteer or whatever. Should it be shared? Well, let's think about that. Okay, so we're all started off on on the same financial foot. However, one has taken on the extra responsibility. Yikes. You might not all stay on the same financial footing because it might have changed. Maybe there were 2 breadwinners in the house and it's gone down to 1.5, maybe just 1. Suddenly everything has changed. Now the person you're taking care of might be able to afford most of their care, which is really great. They might even be able to afford all of their care, which is also really great. So being a home caregiver can be really fine that way also because they can afford to pay all the extras that the person who's taking care of them has taken on. That person's still going to spend about $6,000 a year. Even if it's for, just, like I said, the silly things like gum or I just did something nice that I would never have normally done. Or the case scenario of a vacation. If you want to go on vacation and you are taking care of somebody's going to have to take care of that person unless you take them with you. If you take them with you, it's going to be an extra expense, which the person who you are taking care of, if they did not do the whole, yes, I want to go on that vacation, probably shouldn't have to cover that expense. You're not going to make your kids pay for their trip to Disney. Well, you might, but I don't know. But it's going to be something that you really have to look into the fact that, is it going to be fair? And it might even be a percentage-wise, because it could be that you're all paying, 10% of your income to take care of the person, not 10% of that person's expenses, because there's a vast difference. If you have 2 people, one person's making $100,000 and the other person's making $20,000, yet you're each taking care of 25% of the extra expenses of that person, to the person who's making $100,000, that's nothing. That's like, okay, that's not that big a deal. To the person who's making $20,000, that can be significant. You need to look at it to make sure that it's actually fair. Not necessarily equal, but fair. And that's important to think about. And also the fact that you really are going to spend the extra money that you hadn't even planned on. Everything from dog treats to ice cream cones. There's just some things that you're just going to do simply to make that person that you're caring for happy. And no, I'm not saying feed them dog treats. I'm saying feed their pet dog treats that you wouldn't normally buy. Don't be crazy. But there are things where you want to make their day a little bit better, a little bit special. You're going to do that because that's just a nice thing to do. It's what people generally do. However, it's not something that you would normally do, because if that person weren't living with you, you wouldn't have been driving past the store and been like, hey, let's get some ice cream, or hey, let's go for a ride, or hey, let's do this other thing. There's going to be expenses built into it, and it's okay. Even if your expense is something as simple as just buying flowers. Even if it's something as simple as buying flowers, one, unless that person said that they wanted flowers, don't expect them to pay for something that they didn't actually ask for. That's something to consider. But they might actually enjoy it. So you're willing to make that expense to buy something that they would enjoy. I know for Mom, I got her flowers and some plants so that way she can putter around. And now I'm looking at a gardening wand or an irrigation system. I know they're vastly different, but hey, so that we can take care of those plants without being really a whole lot of work. So that is something to consider. But it's the little things. My goal in life is to make her life even easier. The technology part of it, I ended up spending the money for simply because it made my life easier. I know that she can have her TV, she can have lights turn on and off automatically. I know that Google can talk to her automatically. So it was one of those expenses where it was her for her, but I would be the one who would actually be benefiting from that. So I sort of thought I should be the one who would take in that expense. But it's something to think about. Who's it going to benefit and who's actually going to use it probably is going to be who's going to pay for it, because you can't expect the person who you're getting the stuff for, who isn't even going to use it, to actually pay for it. Then there are the little things that are not for that person, but they're for you. But they're things that you would never have gotten yourself, but now you need something, shopping, therapy, who knows, but you need some way of taking care of yourself, doing something for yourself. That's an expense. That's an expense which you have incurred simply because maybe you don't have the time to do things. Maybe you don't have the inclination. Maybe you're just tired and just want something nice for yourself. It's something that you would never have bought yourself. It's something that you would have never needed, except for the fact that now you just want something for you. It's your own little pleasure that you can have while you're not taking care of somebody, while you're in that downtime. And those extra special things, that's an expense that you never planned on. It's an expense you wouldn't see. And a lot of you are saying, well, you don't need that thing. Well, no, sometimes you really do. Sometimes you just need that thing to push you along so that you can say, hey, I can make it through this day. It's been a rough one, so I need stuff to actually help me get through the day. That is something to think about. Are you going to get those extra special little things, which are items for you, and maybe you alone? Or you can share them. And sharing is its own thing, because now that bag of potato chips, which was shared between you and you, is now shared between you and someone else. It doesn't last as long. And if you're making that person always buy the bag of potato chips, maybe you split it up. I don't know. But just be prepared for the extra expenses. Just be prepared for those I really need to do something for myself moments. Have that money set aside. Talk with everybody in the family about who's going to pay for what, and really think about, just because you need to buy something and the person is in your house, is it really fair for you to have to burden all of that expense? And then also the other part about that is it really fair to burden them with all of that expense? Sure, you added that extra room onto your house, that's really cool, and they wanted to pay for most of it. But should they pay for all of it? Because when you go and sell that house, and that could be a thing. Then comes the expense of time, like some of those things which you had the time to do, you are going to have to pay somebody to do them. You do not have the expense of time to get everything done in the 24-hour day, especially if you're doing things like in our situation here. I have my house, I have Mom's house. Mom can do most of her things, but not all of them. So what's become really interesting is cooking has become a big issue, because I now cook over there so I can keep an eye and check in on her and that sort of thing. Well, that means I can't do anything else that I would be doing over here. And normally we would share in the cooking. Now it is me doing all the cooking, which is fine. I mean, she gets her own breakfast and that sort of thing. But there's a specific reason why she can't do. We are using the HelloFresh because the menu planning became a big issue with trying to plan out 4 meals, shopping for 4 meals, and all of that sort of stuff. So we went to HelloFresh, which I'll leave a link down below if you're interested in it. I will be doing more on menu planning, don't worry, that is coming up. But it changed our lives because it's the menu's there. There is no more, what do you want? I don't know what I want. It's like, hey, here are these 4 items that we have. But the reason she doesn't do that is because it takes a lot of chopping. And I mean a lot of chopping in there. So right now, her dexterity isn't all that great. I'm acting like a lobster for a moment. Her dexterity isn't all that great. So that way I can then do the chopping and that sort of stuff. And she doesn't have to do that. She is not good staying up on her feet for long periods of time right now. So it's something that I can do. We can have a conversation while she's in there watching. I think she's watching Dr. Phil. I think that's who she's watching. But we can have a conversation, catch up with on the day. Not, I haven't seen her many times during the day, but we can do that while that's happening. Now, what's different about that is I'm not here. This is my place. She has her own place right over there. So that means that if things that I would normally do, like I use a desktop to do editing on, can't do that. Things which I would normally do over here, I can't do. The other expenses, one of the things which I did buy was I did buy a vacuum. So they got the robot vacuum, and while I'm over at Mom's in the morning, that's what's running in here so that it can vacuum up the floor. So that is one thing I don't have to do. And it was an expense that wasn't expected, but it's paid off. Little expenses that sometimes will give you great rewards, everything from, although the doorbell thing is its own thing, because yes, I did my technology thing when I talk about the Nest doorbell. It's wonderful to have that over here, but that might be something that you need so that if your doorbell rings at your parents' house or at their parents' area, you can answer, you can see who's there from your area without wondering, well, should I go over? Did it even happen? You can take care of that. But think about all of those little expenses, all those little nice things that you would normally do or you wouldn't do, that are going to change your life, and it's going to change your pocketbook. That's the important thing. It will cost you. Once again, I'm going back to that number. It will cost you about $6,000 of your own out-of-pocket money every year. So think about that before you just jump into it. You can lessen that by everybody getting together and planning for these things. But even with all the best planning on the face of this world, there's still going to be one day where you're going to end up buying something that you hadn't expected to buy. And it does add up, because that one day turns into another, which turns into another, which turns into another. These things can still be items that you love to get for that person, and that's absolutely fine. But you need to think about it. It will happen. If they lived miles away from you in a whole nother state, a whole nother area, you probably wouldn't just go and buy a lemonade for them and take it to them, or a coffee, or some sort of special gadget on a Tuesday because it was Tuesday. You never know. Well, let me know down in the comments what you thought about that, and I hope I get to see you the next time you stop by.